Are we live now? Hi guys, good evening. Good evening everyone here who's joined us. I think the mains is the first essay paper is on 21st and today's third. So I know I'm kind of hard pressed. I was hard pressed on time and now you would be hard pressed to read it. But I will launch this today and that's the idea. There's a link in the description where you can download the X Factor notes. I think we have roughly condensed the whole essay X Factor into odd 60 pages, including the index. And so, two things before I start with this. One, do register for the offline mock starting 6th. I cannot impress upon the point any better that the essays that are out floating in the market are very substandard. And by now, if you're any aspect of any repute or any veteran legacy would know that a lot of people are still dwelling in pastel, temporal, or very, simple examples which are just a prompt away from ChatGPT and whatnot. And the few of the other teachers who are trying to teach TAS are just beginning to pick up ropes. That reflects bad in the essay question papers which they finally make. And so that's something which we've been very, very scrupulous about. So that's one. Register on that link on 6th. I would take a session just after the exam. So like 1 more hour after the exam, if you would give to me, the whole 8 questions we'll discuss in depth. You already had think intentions micro themes. You already had a TAS 101 document. So what I've done now with this X Factor notes for the essays is that I've divided this into 3 broad topics. One is the TAS 101 basic framework. So if someone is new here or someone is preparing for 2027, these few 6 pages would be enough for you to understand what TAS is, what TDD is, what has changed between 21, pre-21 and post-21 era, and why you should junk all the essays from before largely and just focus on 21 to 25 essay to understand where UPSC is going. And then I've reintroduced the think intentions micro themes. This is all that we boil down to at CD. And what I've done, which is the coolest thing that you will find on the internet, is that I've introduced some concepts which are the reason why these tensions exist. Okay, there are some concepts, there's some ladders and not a linear ramp around those concepts, which is why their understanding is elusive. And those people among you who do not have a strong background in philosophy or who've not read enough, you find it pretty generic to write meaningful arguments on that. Okay, so this is a huge block spanning close to somewhere around 20 pages which you need to go through. It's deep theory. Then there's a small snippet of concept ladder. This will help you make your arguments stronger, have more meaning and meat into the arguments. And then there's this really amazing and the highlight of a mature essay writer, which is your mastery over analogies. Okay, and I'll take you through these things. And once this is done, then there are X Factor drops which I've collated back from my letter and spirit group, and people who've been part of that group for about whatever a year and a half since its inception, they would have known these things. I would recommend you that put all these things in your Claude instance and give the prompt to Claude that figure out more such anecdotes from politics, history, science and tech, environment, modern pop culture, etc., which give you this level of understanding of which example to pick, what's the mechanism, and what all essay types it can be used. So, abhi, the idea is that go through this whole document in the next 2 days. We'll have the first open test, Smash Open, on 6th. I'll take the class just after the Smash Open there at the center itself. I think we have a school in Jhandewala. And then maybe 10 days later or so, for the people who are part of the Smash Essay cohort, I'll take you through this whole document with updates on whatever would be your confusions afresh. Okay. So we'll be completely decimating the essay. We'll be smashing the essay in the right spirit, in the letter and spirit this time. Okay, cool. How many of you guys are for the first time joining my live? Just give show of hands. And which year are you attempting? People who are joining my live for the first time, just give me a show of hands here, so I know what to temper this session with. And 27 essay course would be launched just after 10th or about. And I'll be combining essay and ethics together because the more I have spent time this year into checking your open copies, into having one-on-ones with you guys. I think essay and ethics are very close to each other, and Shikhar and I will make a combined course, and Trupti ma'am will also anchor that on the practical side. Anyway, so we have like 45 minutes to discuss how do you go about this X Factor notes. Okay. And to those who are uninitiated on how essays have changed, this is how pre 2021 topics used to look like. Bias media, these are actual PYQs. Okay. Bias media is a threat to democracy. Neglect of primary health and education causes backwardness. And it's simple. It will test your GS knowledge across different dimensions, and your arguments will still have to be short, will have to be backed by data, and you'll have to give a workaround, way forward, etc., which has all now shifted back to your GS papers. Now your GS papers are like that. In 150 to 250 words, you have to either critically examine or elaborate or judge or describe whatever is a policy failure, or internal, domestic, or foreign, whatever, and go about preventing or giving salient points onto how to do it better. Post 2021 topics are difficult in the sense they are more reflective. And these are the three topics which I have covered in this first section. History repeats first as a tragedy and then as a farce. And when I had taken this topic in the class, most of you guys didn't even know how to interpret farce in the aspect of how history is cyclical, and when you do not pay heed to your lessons, it's almost a cruel comedy as to how these cycles keep repeating. Then a smile is the chosen vehicle of all ambiguities. Difficult topic, but that's how deep, reflective essays have become. And history is a series of victory won by scientific man over the romantic man. This is one of those rare essay questions which are pre-synthesized in a way, right? So you have to tackle them in a different way. Anyway, most of you would know that we've described what TAS is, uh, and we've taken a lot of examples in the class, given a framework to solve for the TAS essays, and there are places where TAS does not fit, which is these already pre-synthesized essay, which are largely truth statements, and there you go with the TDD deep dive structure. All that is good and done, and this is just a very quick primer for that. Then this year we realized that most of the things that are being asked in UPSC are tensions, and these are the 11 tensions which keep repeating themselves again and again. And this time onwards, and this is already released as a part of the microtheme document, larger mains microtheme document. And the crux of this X Factor notes are these these 5 things. As you're going to write your essays in the actual exam, just remember these 5 important things that you need to always keep in mind. Okay, these theories and all the examples and all the concepts in the book are just there to ensure that you keep remembering them and then return back to these things as you write your essays. Okay, one is decode your topic better. Okay, stay clear of topics which are too abstract, where you can only diagnose a single meaning. Let's say smile is the carrier of unambiguous things, right? I know that you understand what it means, but you might not be able to imagine 5 to 6 different scenarios where smile obfuscated what the reality was, or smile helped you, save a face in a social scenario, or did something in a particular leadership summit, etc., etc. Or how would you interpret smile, which is an kind of ambiguity defining metaphor, into different meta ways? Avoid those topics. Pick up the topics which are more proverb based. Okay, then strong tasks, we'll come to this. Then rare and multidimensional examples, these a list of this is dumped at the end of this X Factor document. Read them, put that whole bunch on Claude or GPT, whatever you have trained, ask it to throw you more and more of that. When you take those examples, make sure you understand the mechanism also, why that example works, and if you can use those examples in multiple tensions, even better. Then this is the crucial aspect. This is transitions. I can talk all theory about that, but the most important thing is key. When I see your actual copy, that's when I understand if you've figured the transitions well or not. This is basically something which connects your essay in the right flow. And then this is the most important one. And this has been something which I've been drumming up for the whole season. Make your arguments sharper. And the way to make your argument sharper is to understand the nuance, the mechanism better. So we'll go through these things as we understand this PDF. Okay. And I will not be taking you through all the examples. That is for you to download and study, and we'll discuss once you're in the class again, or once you've written few more mocks. But this is the first crucial concept, essentially contested concept. These are the words which we cannot agree upon, which philosophers have not been able to agree upon. And so when UPSC asks these questions, either directly or hidden, in an essay, this is where one of the perspective exists, where you can take the slant of thinkers across the time, and you can just use their line of thoughts and write a compelling essay. Kya karenge? We've taken happiness, because happiness is the most contested word, or it's been the most asked question also. Okay, in 2021 I've taken a few topics. Philosophy of wantlessness is utopian, while materialism is chimera. 2024 में there's no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. 2025, you had one, it's best to see life as a journey, not as a destination. And a second question, contentment is natural wealth, luxury is artificial poverty. If you're mature with your essays, you would understand that happiness is the only contested topic here. And one way to build your essay is to travel through the contested definition of happiness, through time. Contested concepts के दो identifiers होते हैं. One is that it is subjective, which is an easier one. Second is it's made of parts. So happiness will have different parts and different ways in which philosopher would have given a one word meaning to it. Okay? Let's say, for example, this: pleasure, subtract the pain, and whatever is left is called happiness. This is Bentham, and this is how he survived, or he gave his philosophy. That happiness is just a happy time spent, more on the side of pleasure. Okay. Another one, when you talk about Aristotle will say that this is eudaimonia, right? He'll not talk about are you feeling happy right now or not. He'll talk about this: is my life going somewhere? Am I doing something which is worth it according to my standards? And if that's the case, that is all what my happiness ki definition would be about. Epicurus, on the other hand, is remembered full on materialistic. So वो ये नहीं कहता कि just go heedlessly, or go towards materialism like a headless chicken. वो कहता है figure out your desires, limit your wants, use the reason and limit your wants with respect to your station in life, and then go for it. Have friends, good number of friends. I mean, a decent number of manageable friends, and have a good time with them. This is what happiness is. And then you have the Indian parlance, Buddha, Gita. They'll give you their own definition of what happiness is. So in one way, when you have to argue about what happiness is, or what happiness was in the ancient time, what is now in the modern time, what have changed, what variables are different now, is that kind of happiness even achievable or not? Reading about these philosophers will give you a good background theory to establish your arguments in some kind of solid ground. Okay. Happiness, and then you have these different words which are also similarly contested, and then we've taken some of the words which are implicit in these essays. The most important one I'll show you is this: truth came in 2025 directly as truth knows no color. And truth is such a heavy loaded word because truth ko I have tackled in both contested concepts, in ladder, escalated ladder, and also in analogies. So truth ke bare mein padhoge, and I've made sure that I've kept it very, very practical. Okay, that as you read it, you will kind of realize that this is how we think. And so one of the important things in this X Factor notes is that you need to understand the vibe of the word, and not really forget about the philosophers and thinkers. They help because they help you give a solid background and solid footing, but understand the vibe of how this word is changing its context in the time and age that we live in. Okay, so truth, whenever someone asks what truth is, you get three answers. One is truth as fact, what actually happened. One is truth. Second is truth as honesty, and this is how we think. So I've kept things like that, and then I've developed this further. And then truth as ultimate. Now, this is a way of developing truth as how this concept gets contested. And when I develop that, I take help of it's a very cool, it's a very cool metaphor of Jain Anikatmavad, right? Which we all know, but it's always Anikantvad, right? Which most of us confuse and saying in understanding that, it's saying that everyone has their own truth. No, it qualifies your truth based on your context. तो वो ये नहीं कहता कि all of us have our own truth in the way most postmodern truths gets to be understood. Anikant Watt says that, we need to be very careful in telling what our station of life is, what our understanding is, and then we furnish our truth. When you do this, you solve this Western mystery that are there multiple truths or is there one truth? You solve this by saying that, hey, this is my relative access to whatever the highest truth is. Elephant to hum dekh pa rahe hain because I'm drawing this diagram for you. When you start seeing the elephant and you touch the leg or you touch the tail, you don't know if it's the elephant. You just know from where I'm standing, this is what I feel. I don't know if this is the full picture, it's 20% picture, 30%, or this is 90% of the truth. You can never know. So you have that humility which you keep within yourself. That's another perspective to deal with truth. And the question which came in 2025 was around truth knows no color. And I've taken truth in the analogies section also. So think of a prism. And in physics, that we know that the white light, when it passes through the prism, it gathers all the tints, right, of the VIBGYOR, right? And that's one way of you telling that, that is the original truth or whatever is the final objective reality. But when it passes through the prism, and prism is the analogy for, human subjectivity, caste, creed, color, sex, race, whatever, right? That is where we get the multiple subjectivities, which we see, but this is the way to reconcile with it, right? So as you go through this X Factor notes, and these X Factor notes are in the description here. I hope you're able to see it. If not, they'll be made available. The team will put in there. As you go through this, you'll see how even the modern day thinkers, the philosophers, have actually used these or synthesized these definitions and come out with their own practical ways of going about things, right? So we'll talk a lot about Gandhi in here. And even though Gandhi is a very cliche archetype, but trust me, the more I spend time with making the X Factor notes, I realize that Gandhi, has done so much, has experimented so much in his, in his ways and his modus operandi that, you can pick his life an example and then you can use it in different ways and it will still be very fresh. Cool. So there's a lot written about truth. And yeah, this is something which I shared in the Telegram group, that if the truth clashes with another good, where do you decide? And you might just get an essay if UPSC feels adventurous this time, ki is truth the highest virtue, right? Or is XYZ the highest virtue or not? And the ultimate question to answer in that case would be, whoever wields truth as the highest virtue, is he or she the one who pays the price when that contest happens? Just like you have this example in mythology, right? Where Yudhishthir, when he gave that thing, ki Ashwathama, mara gaya, but nar nahi, I mean, not the human, but the animal. It is said that his chariot descended down on the ground. That was his price that he paid. Now, not a lot. It might look like a first world price that he paid for it, but think of it in that terms, right? He was considered as the epitome of the person on the right side of dharma and the truth, right? And uska chariot jab zameen pe aa gaya, jab rath zameen pe aa gaya, then everyone would know that he's lied somewhere. People are not be able to figure out where, but that's like a social stigma, whatever is the merit for that in Yudhishthir's time. So this is where we differentiate between truth versus wisdom, right? This is truth, the Yudhishthir example. This is, if I am a tyrant and I don't pay the price of truth, or and that price is offloaded on the janta, then that is this thing. That is me not paying the price, and that's not wisdom. That's what separates the good truth with the bad truth, if I could use a binary. Go down, and we've taken justice and charity, and the most important thing that we've taken is power. Power is a topic which has not come directly, but it's a topic which has wielded itself in different tensions. And the tensions of force versus influence, the tension of action versus inaction, all these things have these elements of power contesting within themselves. So jab power, when you read through these things, you understand how power is navigated both in Indian, I mean, we've taken some of the Indian philosophy here, mostly derived a lot from Chanakya, but also then taken some of the Western philosophers. Okay, a lot in fact here, right? How power and understanding of power has changed through time, and that's where you'll understand that every new philosopher of its own era has added more heft and more nuance to this. And the most interesting one is Michel Foucault. So read him alag se bhi if you're a 2027 aspirant, but for a 26 guys, just go through this. Don't trouble your mind over remembering the names. Just go through this PDF multiple times, 2 or 3 times. You'll understand a lot of connections between the paragraphs, between different sections, and trust me, you'll remember a lot. And the essay that you're going to attempt on 6, which will be much more powerful than what you've been attempting abhi tak. Okay, I'll quickly, and wherever I've felt that, like, power, I felt very strong for. And so whenever I felt that a particular concept is contested, which means not just philosophers but even modern day politicians would have figured out different slants to this concept, I've put in the quotes here for you to go through. Clausewitz came last year in ethics paper, uh, and so some of them can come in ethics but can definitely be used in essay. Education and wisdom and information, I think these are the topics where I've seen a lot of you guys getting confused. How information becomes knowledge, how knowledge leads to understanding, how understanding leads to wisdom. I've seen a lot of you guys using these concepts very interchangeably, almost like very carelessly. And so it makes sense that you understand why that is the case. I mean, it's not your fault, and it's not for the reason that you've not studied these humanities topics, but that the reason is that they are indeed used very carelessly in our modern parlance, right? We use these things very carelessly, and so this education ka concept will tell you where are we going wrong. In fact, there's a nice because it's a contested concept, that means the definition of education or the priorities of education will change for different eras or different societies. So I've tried to give you a sense of how it was in ancient India, how it was in Greece, what are the virtues that they kept on top, which is what education is supposed to give to you, right? If you redefine education in the AI era, I would tell you that critical thinking tops the list of what education should give you. Not information, not necessarily data dump, but critical thinking, your ability to in fact philosophize and look at something with different perspective. And so as you read through the X factors, try to gain these insights. Or kuch bhi problem ho, you have my Telegram group, Veteran Spirit on Telegram. Feel free to drop your questions. On 6th, when we would have discussed the model answers of the open test of the essay, we'll see if we have time and we can spend some more on these X factors there and offline. Cool. So this is what and this is what I have attempted. So when I figured that I understand these things in theory, but if I were to remember them or have like a diagram to so that they get etched in your memory, there are some diagrams in this document which you will find handy, right? Where you will really realize where one thing lies and where the other thing lies, so that you understand the gap and the jump that you need to cross the gap, which is what you need to mention in your arguments. So understand that whatever this theory that you will read, you will eventually use it in your essay, and you will use it in this point number 5. Okay, matlab, I'm not teaching you for the heck of it, but this point 5, where you make a really strong analytical para, for you to make that, you need to master your arguments, which means you need to assert properly, you need to tell me the mechanism, then you need to give me an example. Mechanism ka jo pain hai, wo isliye some of us don't do better is because either we don't have command over the analogies. If you know analogies, then we'll say that, hey, in that particular discipline this happens and this mechanism is similar to that discipline. That will understand what you're trying to say. Or you know how this concept is contested, so you will clarify my attention there. Or when we'll come to that soon, you will tell me that, hey, this is a ladder which gets climbed, and between each step there is a gap which is supposed to be filled or fixed with a certain additional virtue, certain data point, certain knowledge. And that's when you go from, let's say, data to information, information to understanding, understanding to wisdom. ये automatically नहीं होता, it's not like a linear thing, there's something which gets added. तो ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग आपको होगी when you read through the X factor properly. Cool, lot of diagrams so that whatever it takes for you to understand these concepts in depth, because you don't have a lot of time, I've tried to give that. Freedom is another, is one of the key topic that we've discussed, because freedom also is not asked directly, but it's like the fundamental hidden theme in a lot of tensions which are part of your essay topics. Okay, not all who wander are lost. There is freedom as a theme hidden inside it, right? Then just because you have a choice, it doesn't mean any of them has to write. That's the freedom to act or the freedom to not act. But when would you make that choice? How would you decide? How would that wisdom come to you? Is what's discussed in the freedom wala thing. Then ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what the ship is for. Again, this is freedom for action and inaction. Freedom to just do nothing versus freedom to go and pay heed to your life's calling. So this essay, this it took me almost a month to get you this document to you, because I read through your copies. I tried to understand what is it that you lack, why, and I spoke with you, so I understood that you understand the concept, you understand the tension, you're not able to put it out on the paper, which is where it lacks, right? And so for me to make these X factor notes, it was important that I give you practical, handy things which you can remember and replicate in the exams, right? The 2027 kids, whoever are watching this video, we'll be taking classes in depth on this, so that right now, maybe starting September, you will develop a good mature head around these theories. Okay, I would request my team to put in the link here on the chat, but other people, you can just see the description. Where else would the X factor be? Jagan, just see the description, you will have the link to download the X factor. Okay, cool. So, and these are like deep concepts. Okay, and a lot of them would kind of clear your misunderstanding and maybe give some side note catharsis also personally, on the concept that you're struggling with, because these are contested concepts. So a generation before us would have a different idea what freedom is. A generation next to us, we've seen how Gen Z protested, will have a different idea of what freedom is, what guide their truth. We would have our own ideas. Ancient and medieval philosophers would have their own way. And that's what reflection is. The more you understand different variables at play, the better you will be able to reflect. Iske baad, the only thing which is most important is how you put that into paper, which I'll come to that. That's also part of this X factor. How you put your arguments on the paper. And I've taken examples here on how you do it better versus how you do it in a very shoddy way. Okay. I'll take a moment, but people who are just joining me, tell me if this makes sense to you, and tell me if you've been able to download X factor and open on your respective system. Okay, Jyoti. Team, can you please make sure that there is a link? Can you put that link here? There's a link put on the description box. Especially this freedom wala topic we've done across tensions. Okay, so I mean, these are some of the new areas that I've gone into. So part of this document you can directly relate with the PYQs that have come. Part of this document would be slightly brand new theory, and I would request that you stay put with it, because and there's no assumption that you would have read some philosophy or you would have read X number of books or some of the literature that you read in your undergrad stuff. I think even engineers have some humanities topics, but and that's a great relief back in engineering days. But there's no assumption like that. Okay, so chill type padna. There's a proper chronology how some theories developed over time across the years. Some of the philosophers which I have found slightly more engaging, I've given them more white space here, and then some of them I've just left. Okay, a lot of you people who part of the PSIR course or sociology courses, they would find a lot of parallels here, and probably it will help you. I mean, let me know if this helps you with your optionals in some side quest way. Anyway, but a lot of interesting things we do here, and this time I've struggled really hard on how to give you the right kind of diagram so that you understand this thing and you never forget what freedom versus equality can be like, right? These are similar cases which you find in ethics, where two good things pull apart and something has to give for you to take a call in that question. Okay, I hope everyone's able to download the X Factor. Uh, how many of you are going to attempt in 2027? Just give me a heads up here. People who are going to attempt in 27, just give a heads up and tell me, are you preparing full time or part time? Cool. So a lot of this, but let me come to the most favorite part in this. There's a lot in this essay X Factor. It's not concept ladder. Concept ladder is also very amazing. I'll take you through one of them. I'll take you through one question, which is a PYQ, which came. Life is a long journey between human being and being humane. Okay. And this is such an interesting question. Almost all of us automatically know that, what it is to be just born and what it is to finally actualize your human potential. But some of us err on the side of being more intelligent, being more sharp, being more analytical, on the side of execution heavy. And some of us go on the side of being more good, kind, all those nicer, softer feelings. But that's not what the essay is asking. Okay, the essay is asking whether you know that, and this is technical, whether you know that this is how your evolution actually happens. You're born a human, then you become aware of, who you are, what your biases are, you become aware of your existence and other people around you. Then you become moral when you follow the rules about how to treat them, right? And then morality has its own set of theories across the thinkers, right? So different thinkers would have given moral theories around their time in their society, which you would be aware of, and you will find contradictions within yourself. And finally, you became humane when you go past these rules and you empathize with people, essentially, right? So when you go beyond the rules, you go beyond what is sanctioned, what's not sanctioned in society, uh, technically speaking, but you listen to your inner voice. You become you become more empathetic with them. Okay, so these are called concept ladders. The fun of concept ladders is that the jumps from one step to another is not obvious. Okay, there is something which gets added onto you. जैसे ये human वाले में था ना, it's not obvious that all humans are aware, right? A lot of us just carry on with our lives just like that without noticing. We live like animals most of the times, and we hardly notice the changing things. This in the context of the protest that just happened, right? People who had to diss the protest for the heck of it, they would find some elements which would obviously be bad, and they would magnify that element as a representative of the whole protest, and so find out a reason of not going there or not supporting it, right? And that should tell you about them rather than the protest. Some people would be more aware and would understand both pros and cons, and would still see the idea is this principle. I can see the stage being hijacked by political parties and other groups, other pressure groups, but maybe that's the inevitability of such a big protest. Otherwise there are protests which keep happening in silos in India all around, and no one gets to hear on a single screw about it. So as you go through these ladders, you'll understand what step jumps you need to take. Okay, and I have made sure that I give you these mechanisms, these missing ingredients, right? So at every step you will realize what is needed for you to become from hatred to tolerant, from tolerant to a person who respects or who accepts, and from that to show solidarity. This is also, by the way, one of the ways in which you become, you transition from human to humane. This is the part of the last aspect of being humane, right? This is how you handle negative or criticism or people you do not like. And so keep going in this, you'll understand what peace really means. There are topics in essays, and I checked a few of them, which says that the absence of conflict doesn't really mean peace, which is true. And you would know this topic and this concept only when you've gone through this ladder properly, right? You'll understand the idea of negative peace, positive peace. You'll understand these chronology. You'll understand what missing ingredient is at each level, and you will be able to write a better argument. ये सारा कुछ ज्ञान is just so that when you write an argument, when you prove a point, you're able to show that you know the nuance also. It's not just that you're asserting, but you're able to tell the mechanism how it happens. And the deeper your understanding of these mechanisms are and start to take shape, the better your examples would be. In the sense, examples would be same, but you will be able to recall the right fit. the better your prompts on GPT or Claude would be to find the right example for this particular mechanism. And that's why X factor is not a lot about examples that you can easily find on any of the AI system. It's about how cleverly and how critically do you pick up the right examples to suit your temperament of essay writing. Okay? Essay writing is now very, very personal. Even though I teach standard TAS, I teach TDD, and I teach all these things, when I check your essay, I try to find your tone, your personality in that essay. So a lot of time I'm pleasantly surprised by the kind of introductions you guys write up with. I'm pleasantly surprised by a Panchatantra ki kahani coming and beautifully narrated, almost flowing, like it's meant to be there. And that's where your X factor comes in. Okay. Cool. And then I've given, for every concept, for every theme that I've introduced in this X factor notes, we've given how do you use them in the essay so that you're able to find the practicality on your tips. That's there. And this is the best part. If you want to, not be overwhelmed by the content, I would say start directly from analogies. How many of you guys know what analogies are and have used in the essays? Let me take a 2-minute breather. Shipra, Jyoti, Sumit, Saurabh. I don't see a lot of familiar names. All new guys are here. Kya aaj? How many of you guys have no basic analogies? Guys, come on, write on chat. I mean, it's otherwise very difficult for me to just keep up with the monologue. Nothing. Beautiful. There are two kinds of analogies. One are those analogies which kind of give you an image of things. Okay, those analogies are also the ones which are usually abused by old people. They'll just give you a random analogy and say, I'll tell you what those kind of things are. Yeah. So the analogies break. The analogies are amazing, but they break. They break when they're recklessly used like this. Like the nation is a family. I get what you're trying to say, but that's not the case, right? Prime Minister or any of the leader you elect, okay, and in the family you don't do that. You cannot escape your parents. You can escape a particular leader. So if you stretch the analogy too far and make it too sweet, then you'll not be able to prove the point. You'll look very ridiculous in the essay attempt. And I think this is an exchange which happened. I've seen somewhere in either the Jaipur Lit Fest or a Lallantop video with Anupam Kher saying that आज के लोग गालियां बहुत देते हैं, या you cannot abuse your father, etc., etc. And so another person, another gentleman, another politician, I suppose, he came and he said that there's a difference between how you understand a political party who's helming the nation versus the human who's helming your family. That's where the analogies break, and that's where you need to understand that the simple cliche analogies, they do a good job in explaining a concept, but there's a break point which you need to understand. Okay. Like for example, when you call migrants a flood, whenever you use rhetorics for analogies, they paint a very vivid picture, and that's where you lose the logic. But a lot of people who are very emotional and they get swayed by these imaginations or these visceral concepts, they will fall for you. That's what is called jumla in politician in the politics ka parlance. Avoid them in analytical essays. और तीसरा क्या था? Yeah, a country should budget like a household and not spend more money than you earn. This sounds like generic wisdom, and I can't take the name of our esteemed finance minister, but you would sometimes find these people talking like this, and you would find that it's making sense to some people, but it's just so ridiculous to me. Where is the break? The break is here. A country is not a household. It prints its own money. Country never retires, and that's where that comparison breaks. These 3 points notwithstanding, try to master the analogies. Not just because essay wants you to, because all the great thinkers, philosophers, leaders have used analogies to put their abstract thoughts on the paper and convey their sense to you. Analogies and its mastery would be the hallmark of your essay mastery. Okay. And the better essay writers that I've seen and I've checked are able to wield analogies much, much better than the normal ones. So ये तो पढ़ लोगे, ये तो आसान है, and I've given some Aesop's fable Same could be from Hitopadesha, Panchatantra. I dare say Aesop's fable were actually inspired from, some of these old Indian texts which are lost in time. But the most important part of these analogies would be the mature ones. These are something which I would say read twice or thrice. How many of you guys are engineers here, or at least people who took sciences? Sciences, physics, chemistry, bio, have systems, and systems have a way of functioning. So if I tell you that, um, that if I try to if I want to tell you how institutions, when they're not looked upon, when citizens stop behaving like citizens, there's an entropy which screws up the whole society. Or if I use the word of half-life there, okay, that it starts decaying. It doesn't completely decay, but it decays by half-life. I'm kind of invoking that physics ka concept. And if I'm invoking the physics ka concept, I can use the mechanism of how half-life of radioactive matter decays and use it in my humanities. These are how loosely we can use one theme or one mature system onto another if you want to convey the part. Same for escape velocity. If I want to convey that poverty, beyond a certain limit, if you do not take care of the poor, they'll fall back below the poverty line again. So that they need a certain escape velocity. I can use this seemingly technical word and it will fit the bill. And the reader or the examiner or the reviewer or the essay checker would understand and give you a higher mark. Same monoculture in biology. The pros of monoculture is that it's efficient, it utilizes the things very fast, grows very fast. But the cons is that, and the tension is that, it's one disease away from being obliterated. And you can use that as a way of talking about your systems, right? So I've used it. Where do you want to? So these are the ways in which you can use it. If you want to argue for conformity, against conformity, then this is what you need to say. I've also given the antithesis. So use it when it's thesis. Where it breaks is the antithesis. Wherever it made sense. Anti-fragility. It's also a concept made very famous by Nicholas Nasib Taleb. Anti-fragility, inoculation of medicine can be used where small dose of stress can actually help you become a much better leader, much better warrior, and so on and so forth. Then tragedy of commons, Gresham's law. Imagine this is a concept of economics which basically has one idea that bad money drives out the good money. And this was most often quoted by editorial writers around the time when what happened? You had that demonetization happened, correct? And so if you have to use or prove a case where you have to argue that dishonesty spreads, where if you stay neutral, the honest people will just leave your system, they'll just leave your company, they might not raise their voices, they will just quietly leave away, then this is where you can use Gresham's law. You can invoke that. Force versus influence. Compound interest, I've seen a lot of people using. Things compound, good virtues compound, etc., etc. A lot of people use this. Signal versus noise, I use a lot in my class, and you can use a lot in data versus knowledge, or information versus knowledge, or knowledge versus wisdom. In those cases, garbage and garbage out is a very famous computer science part logo also. Okay, and then this is a section where I have detailed how to use these analogies in your essays, right? The diffraction analogy of prism and truth being the white light and then getting refracted into 7 different light, we've already discussed. Another one is thought finds a world and creates one also. It's a very difficult essay when it came, and I would ask you to refrain from attempting this essay, even though it's very tantalizing. It's tantalizing because this concept is similar to a concept of quantum physics, which is called the observer effect there. An observer effect ये कहता है कि the act of observing changes what is observed. And in that manner, if I look at the reality, I might think I'm an objective onlooker, but I'm not. My looking and witnessing the reality makes me participate in that. So people who've read quantum physics, you would know what I'm talking about. And you can use such concepts, you can use these kind of jargons to have the right analogical setup there. Best lessons are learned through bitter experiences, scar tissues, we know this. Sedimentation was the obvious analogy which came to all of you, right? Whenever, I mean, I think 90% of you guys, when you read last year paper, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone, you remembered sedimentation and how it works. And if you remembered sedimentation, then you also remembered that colloidal solutions में sedimentation नहीं होता है. So you got another dimension. And this way of reflection will keep giving you newer and newer points. Contentment is natural wealth, luxuries are artificial poverty. The analogy could be the hedonic treadmill, right? It's like a treadmill which you keep running at the same point, right? You're running, you're exhausting yourself, but you're not traveling any distance. So the displacement is zero. You might have traveled a distance, but the net displacement is zero. The point of using analogies is that if you figured out a tension and you have some dimensions and you want to give me a signal of your intellect and your well-readedness, or that you've read well, you can import examples from different disciplines, then these are the best case savior for you guys. I can keep going on, but I'll be wasting your time. So that's about it, I think. Yeah, just one last thing before I leave this live. Go through the whole thing. Okay, download this. We'll soon make this thing available at the OR and Xerox shops, so you can pick up the X Factor notes from there itself. Read everything in one go. Make your own notes. There are some white spaces in the pages, so you can just make your notes. Think about tensions which now will seem familiar to you and similar to you one with another, and that would be your sign of maturity. But come back to those 5 things that I said, which is going to be the main things that you need to remember as you write the essay topic. And इसका जो last 5th point था वो ये है कि your argument in the essay cannot be a GS dump of olden times. You have to be able to tell me what mechanism will assert your opinion and then give me an example. ये जो second point है ना, इस पे to gain mastery, you have to do 2 things. One, keep reading the X Factor notes so you'll understand how to look at some topic from different perspectives. Either that this concept is contested, or that this concept has actually ladders in which you travel. Yeah, there are analogies in which I can explain what the hell is going on here better. Or you write more and more. So you might come up with something interesting. And when I read your paper, I'll figure out that that's a very valid, an interesting digression that you can only take. But this is very important. I think I wrote this is an example that I gave. Okay, contentment is natural wealth, luxury is artificial poverty. Now, I gave an example as to how you would actually write in the paper, but कुल जुम्मा मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ कि luxury, that let's say if you assert this thing that luxury does not make us richer, it makes us poorer. Okay, why do you say that? Effectively, what I mean to say is that as you tilt more on the side of luxury, मतलब तुम अपनी needs से जाके wants पे आ रहे हो, those luxury things, they become your new baseline. They shift back to your need wala side. Okay, let's say there's AC in the room, and if I've made my body now accustomed to AC, soon enough, a few months down the line, I'll not be able to survive without AC, without air being conditioned to a particular temperature. Okay, this, what is luxury to a poor person, will become my basic need, and this keeps on going. Now my AC will have to have, I don't know, sub 16 temperatures, because because I've started eating food which is, because I've started eating non-seasonal food, which is I think क्या कहते हैं आयुर्वेदा में शायद वात या कुछ और गर्मी करता है अंदर, whatever, right? So I have gone beyond my needs and I've stopped checking my system, and in doing so I'm increasing my level of luxury, which is what my reason would be here, that the person chasing more never arrives, because each time he finishes, that baseline moves ahead. This dimension which I just opened, I can keep exploring this in different ways. I can keep glorifying my goal, my achievement, and then I would say that now I cannot live a normal life. Now I have to keep achieving something every week. Okay, and that becomes, my need becomes that I need to have kicks every week or every now or so. I cannot live a normal life where nothing happens. So I cannot be bored. And you would feel these things often talked about in the era of mobile phones and social media algorithms and whatnot. But this is what gives the real meat to your arguments. And these are the paragraphs which when you write your thesis, when you write your antithesis, when you keep repeating across, you will find your essay to be much, much mature and your thinking to be much sharper with much more clarity. And that for sure will get you above 140 marks. Okay. I hope I'm making sense to everyone who's still on live, and a show of hand would be good. And then after you've done through all those things, after you've understood all the slants, all the perspective, spend some time on these X factor drops. What I've done in these X factor drops is that we've given a simple line of what an anecdote is, which you can expand in your Google search or your AI GPT search. And then I've given you some of the target essays where this example can be used. And this is exactly how you need to keep preparing your examples the whole year. So, as a note, as an important note, those of you who are preparing for 27 and 28, whenever you find an example attractive enough, okay, go completely with the vibe. If you find an example or a news which has a good vibe, you think it's a good ethics ka case or a good essay ka thing, note that example and think about what kind of essays can this come in. If you can think by yourself, even better. If you cannot think by yourself, then do this. Put this PDF ka ye wala section on your prompt, and then put your new example in there, and then ask, give me some of the essay topics where I can reuse this example. What this will do is it will start to make you understand how you can look at one single event in different aspect, right? So, for example, this is a very famous one, was used last time by a lot of rankers, that in the Cuban Missile Crisis, JFK resisted military pressure from his side to escalate the tension and strike Cuba with the nuclear weapon. Because he had read a book, Guns of August, by this lady, Barbara Tuchman, she's a historian, where she mentioned that how lack of planning and also lack of communication, lack of free and open communication, enough back channeling, escalated the whole event, and it became a full blown war, which could have been prevented. Right? And so this guy wanted to explore that side, but all his advisors were set against that. Now, if you have to give this example on your essay topic, you have these three possible essays, right? Those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it. Okay, that farce wala essay, history, it does not repeat itself in cycle. Then it's a farce. Whatever the first one I took. Crisis doesn't build a character, it reveals it, right? So in the crisis and time of crisis, JFK revealed his character, that he could still hold back, still be more patient, still have the first rate intelligence that Scott Fitzgerald talks about, that holding two different opinions and still retain your ability to function. And wars are poor chisels for carving out peaceful tomorrow. This is something which Kennedy after the war would tell in a public lecture, that always give time, be patient, because war is never the solution. Who can say these things with authority? Someone who would have already gone through such a scenario and come out and prevailed through that, right? So कुछ 15 से 20 anecdotes हैं यार यहाँ पे. I would suggest that all of you guys are preparing for 27. If you read daily newspaper or if you attend the Samachar Manthan classes over here at the weekend, go back. If you like something, make a note of it. But not just make a note of these examples, make a note of the possible essays that it can commit. That will teach you how to think sharper. Okay, I'm done. That's kind of all I think. That's all that's all. Is there any question on live I can take? Otherwise, the session is done. You guys can download the notes. And I'll just close this session in 2 minutes now. Any question here? People who want to talk and know more about the essay and ethics course for 27, you can come and meet us in the office in Delhi. We'll be launching the course somewhere around 15th of August. The course will start and we'll start the course from basic to advanced. Do not leave your essay and ethics preparation after prelims. बिल्कुल भी मत करना. These are tough papers now. बहुत बुरा मरोगे. ठीक है, I'm not mincing words here. These kind of philosophies and these kind of reflections are not easy to come by. So you need to start right now. Make sure before December you do a good one round of mains preparation. After December, say around 15 January onwards, you can start full throttle with your prelims preparation, so that when you come post prelims with us, to us for Smash, you're just writing and keep improvising. We will still have classes, but those will be high-end classes. I have still not revealed the notes which I take in the classes, where I take each tensions in depth, because those are advanced notes, and those I'll be able to do better justice to them if I have 2 hours with you or 3 hours with you in a class. Cool. Thank you for staying on live. Download the notes, spread it among your friends. This is the first ever edition of X Factor Notes on essays, and I hope it serves you well. Take care. Good evening.